Why do we suffer so much? Because we hold too tightly. There is a teaching in Buddhism that is both simple and profound. It says, much of our suffering does not come only from life itself. It comes from attachment, from clinging, from wanting things to stay the way we want. At first, this teaching can sound strange, because when we are in pain, we often think the reason is obvious. We say, I suffer because that person hurt me. I suffer because I lost someone. I suffer because life is unfair. I suffer because people changed. And yes, those things do hurt. Buddhism does not deny pain. If someone leaves us, it hurts. If we lose money, it hurts. If our health changes, it hurts. If our children struggle, it hurts. If the people we trust disappoint us, it hurts. Pain is real. But Buddhism gently asks us to look deeper. It asks, why does one event leave one person wounded for years, while another person learns, cries, heals, and slowly becomes peaceful again? Why can two people experience the same loss, yet one becomes bitter and trapped, while the other becomes softer, wiser, and freer? The difference is often not only in the event. The difference is in the attachment around the event. The Buddha taught that suffering grows when the mind says, this must not change. This person must stay. This feeling must continue. This success must remain mine. This image of myself must not be shaken. Life must go according to my plan. And when life does not obey, the mind resists. That resistance becomes suffering. So the teaching is not saying that love is wrong. It is not saying that relationships are wrong. It is not saying we should become cold, distant, or empty. It is saying something more subtle. Love becomes suffering when it turns into possession. Care becomes suffering when it turns into control. Hope becomes suffering when it turns into demand. Memory becomes suffering when it turns into imprisonment. That is where Buddhism becomes very practical. Because this is not only philosophy. This happens in daily life, every day, in very small moments. Let us look carefully. A mother loves her child. That love is natural, beautiful, and deeply human. But if the mother begins to say inside her heart, my child must become exactly what I expect, then love slowly mixes with attachment. Now the child is no longer just a child. The child becomes a project, a proof, a dream, an extension of the mother's ego. And when the child chooses differently, the mother suffers. The suffering does not come from love itself. It comes from clinging to a fixed outcome. A man loves a woman. At first he feels warmth, joy, and gratitude. But little by little, fear appears. He wants certainty. He wants reassurance. He wants her words, her attention, her time, her loyalty, her emotional energy to flow toward him in the exact way he expects. Now love begins to tighten. And once love tightens, fear grows. He starts watching, doubting, comparing, overthinking, feeling hurt by small changes. A delayed message becomes a wound. A quiet tone becomes rejection. A busy day becomes emotional distance. Again, the pain is not only in the relationship. The pain is in the grasping. We do the same with success. Someone works hard and finally builds something meaningful. A career. A business. A reputation. A book. A community. And naturally, they feel proud. But then attachment whispers, this must keep growing. People must praise me. I must not fail. I must not lose what I built. My value depends on this. At that point, work is no longer just work. It becomes identity. It becomes survival. It becomes self-worth. Then even a small criticism feels devastating. A quiet month feels like collapse. A slow season feels like personal failure. The external problem may be real, but the deep suffering comes from inner fusion. I am this thing. If this thing shakes, I shake. This is why Buddhist teaching is so liberating. It separates life from clinging. You can love but not possess. You can work but not worship success. You can care deeply but not chain your peace to the result. You can enjoy what is beautiful while understanding it is temporary. This word, temporary, is very important. In Buddhism, one of the deepest truths is impermanence. Everything changes. Not sometimes. Always. Youth changes. Beauty changes. Money changes. Mood changes. Relationships change. Bodies change. Children grow. Parents age. Friends come close, then move away. Seasons pass. Homes change. Dreams change. Even the version of you that you are trying so hard to protect will also change. We understand this intellectually, but emotionally, we resist it. And that resistance is exhausting. We want permanent comfort in an impermanent world. We want guaranteed emotional security in a world where all forms shift. We want no loss, no aging, no separation, no disappointment. We want life to behave like a promise. But life is not a promise. Life is a flow. The river does not apologize for moving. The leaf does not ask permission before falling. The sky does not remain sunset forever just because we think it is beautiful. And yet the human mind says, stay. This is why we suffer. Person receives praise and feels happy. That is natural. But then the mind clings. It wants more praise. It depends on being seen. Soon silence becomes painful. Being unnoticed becomes a form of hunger. Another person receives affection and feels safe. That too is natural. But then the mind clings. It becomes afraid of distance, afraid of silence, afraid of change. Soon love turns into anxiety. Another person enjoys a peaceful season of life. But instead of simply living it, the mind starts fearing the end of it. So even in happiness, fear is already present. This is one of the saddest things about attachment. It not only causes pain after loss, it often poisons joy while we still have the thing. When attachment is strong, we cannot fully enjoy anything. Because part of us is already afraid. We hold a flower and think of withering. We hold love and think of abandonment. We hold money and think of losing it. We hold beauty and think of aging. We hold success and think of failure. So attachment steals peace in two directions. Before loss and after loss. That is why the Buddhist path is not asking us to stop living. It is teaching us how to live without being internally chained. Then the question becomes, what does letting go really mean? Many people misunderstand this. They think letting go means indifference. They think it means becoming cold. They think it means, if I do not attach, I will not love deeply. Or, if I let go, I will stop caring. True letting go is not emotional emptiness. It is emotional wisdom. Letting go means, I love you, but I do not own you. I care for this work, but my soul does not depend on applause. I enjoy this season, but I do not demand that it stay forever. I welcome what comes, and I bow to what leaves. That is not weakness. That is maturity. Imagine holding a bird. If you squeeze it too hard, you hurt it. If you hold it gently, it can rest in your hands. Maybe it stays. Maybe it flies away. Love with attachment says, "Do not leave, because I need you to remain myself." Love with wisdom says, "I cherish your presence, but I cannot make permanence out of life." This kind of understanding makes the heart softer, not colder. A person who understands impermanence often becomes more loving, not less. Because they stop taking things for granted. They know a meal with family is precious, because it will not last forever. They know a child's little voice is precious, because childhood passes. They know health is precious because bodies change. They know a peaceful morning is precious, because not every morning will feel the same. Impermanence, when resisted, creates fear. But when accepted, it creates gratitude. This is a very important transformation. Resistance says, "I am scared this will end." Wisdom says, "Because this will end, I will treasure it gently." This is how Buddhism turns pain into awakening. Now let us go deeper. Why do humans cling so much? Because underneath attachment, there is usually fear. We cling because we fear emptiness. We cling because we fear loneliness. We cling because we fear uncertainty. We cling because we fear that without this person, this role, this image, this success, we may not know who we are. So sometimes attachment is not really about the object. It is about identity. A person may say, "I cannot let go of this relationship." But deeper inside, perhaps they mean, "I do not know who I am without being loved by this person." Or, "I do not know how to face life without this emotional habit." Or, "I am afraid that if this ends, I will have to meet my own emptiness." This is why silence feels uncomfortable to many people. Because when life becomes quiet, the attachments become visible. No messages. No noise. No praise. No drama. No distraction. Then the mind must face itself. That is why many people keep chasing, scrolling, comparing, seeking, and grasping. Not because they are bad, but because stillness reveals what they have not yet healed. In Buddhism, awareness is the beginning of freedom. Not force. Not suppression. Not pretending. Awareness. You begin to watch the mind. You notice, "I am suffering because I want this person to act according to my script. I am suffering because I want the past back. I am suffering because I tied my value to people's approval. I am suffering because I cannot accept that this season has ended. I am suffering because I am trying to keep life from moving." This moment of seeing is powerful. Because once you clearly see attachment, something begins to loosen, not all at once, but sincerely. You stop saying, "Life is hurting me," and begin asking, "What am I gripping so tightly?" That question can change everything. For example, someone may feel jealous. On the surface, jealousy looks like a problem caused by another person. But if we examine it carefully, jealousy often contains attachment to comparison, to exclusivity, to insecurity, to being chosen. Someone else may feel devastated by criticism. But the deeper wound may be attachment to being admired, attachment to perfection, attachment to a self-image of being always good, always right, always impressive. Another person may feel unable to move on from the past. Perhaps the attachment is not only to the person or event. Perhaps it is attachment to an unfinished version of the self. A self that wanted a different ending. A different answer. A different story. This is why Buddhism does not only treat symptoms. It looks at the roots. And when we begin to see the roots, compassion becomes possible. We stop hating ourselves for being emotional. We stop shaming ourselves for hurting. Instead, we understand. This pain is showing me where I am attached. This attachment is showing me where I am afraid. This fear is showing me where I need truth, healing, and inner stability. Then suffering itself becomes a teacher. Not a pleasant teacher, but sometimes a very honest one. Many people only begin to wake up spiritually after disappointment, after betrayal, after loss, after heartbreak, after failure, after burnout. Why? Because suffering breaks illusion. As long as everything goes according to desire, the ego feels confirmed. It says, yes, I can control life. Yes, I can keep things the way I want. Yes, I can build certainty here. But suffering interrupts that dream. It says, no, you cannot make life obey. You cannot build permanent shelter out of temporary things. You cannot demand that change stop. At first this truth feels harsh, but later it becomes freeing. Because once you stop demanding permanence from the world, you suffer less from its movement. You still feel. You still grieve. You still love. You still care. But you do not collapse in the same way. You become like a tree with deep roots. The wind still moves the branches, but the whole tree is not destroyed. That inner rootedness is what spiritual practice gives us. So how do we actually practice letting go? First, we tell the truth. We honestly name what we are attached to. Maybe it is a person. Maybe it is being understood. Maybe it is being needed. Maybe it is a version of the past. Maybe it is beauty. Maybe it is youth. Maybe it is success. Maybe it is control. Without honesty, there is no freedom. Second, we observe impermanence in small daily moments. A cup of tea becomes cold. Morning turns into afternoon. A child's clothes become too small. Flowers fade. Music ends. Conversation ends. Energy changes from day to day. These are not sad facts. They are spiritual lessons. They train the heart to stop expecting permanence from passing forms. Third, we create space between feeling and reaction. When pain arises, do not immediately chase, text, cling, argue, demand, or collapse. Pause. Breathe. Ask, what am I really afraid of right now? What am I trying to hold? What story is my mind creating? If I do not act from fear in this moment, what would wisdom do? This pause is sacred. It interrupts the automatic habit of attachment. Fourth, we build an inner life. Meditation, prayer, mindful walking, quiet reflection, journaling, gentle self-observation. These practices strengthen the part of us that can witness experience without drowning in it. If your whole life depends only on outer things, attachment will rule you. But if you learn to rest inwardly, you become less desperate. You still appreciate people, but you do not consume them emotionally. You still value work, but you do not make it your God. You still enjoy praise, but you do not starve without it. Fifth, we practice gratitude instead of possession. This is a beautiful shift. Instead of saying, this must stay mine, we say, thank you for being here while you are here. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this meal. Thank you for this person. Thank you for this chance. Thank you for this healthy season. Thank you even for this lesson. Gratitude opens the hand. Attachment closes it. One leads to peace. The other leads to fear. In the end, The Buddhist teaching on attachment is not asking us to reject life. It is inviting us to meet life more truthfully, to love without chaining, to work without worshipping, to enjoy without grasping, to grieve without becoming imprisoned, to let beauty be beautiful without demanding that it last forever. This is not easy. It may take years, sometimes a whole lifetime, but even a small amount of understanding can change the quality of our life. If today you can notice one attachment clearly and hold it a little more gently, that is already practice. If today you can stop forcing one outcome, that is already practice. If today you can say, I still care, but I will not destroy my peace by trying to control what I cannot control, that is already practice. The Buddha did not teach freedom as something far away. He taught it in the middle of ordinary life, in a hurting heart, in a fearful mind, in a changing world. And perhaps the real peace we seek is not found by making life stable. Perhaps it is found by becoming spacious enough to live inside change. When we stop asking the world to remain still for us, the heart slowly becomes lighter. And in that lightness, there is room for wisdom. There is room for compassion. There is room for breathing again. And maybe that is where true peace begins. Not when nothing changes, but when we finally stop fighting the truth that everything does. If this reflection touched something in your heart, maybe it is not a coincidence that you are here today. Sometimes we are not searching for answers. We are simply searching for a quiet place for the mind. This channel was created for those quiet moments. A place where we pause, slow down, and gently look at life with a little more wisdom. If you would like to explore more reflections about life, suffering, peace, and understanding the human mind, you are always welcome here. This is Gentlemind, a small space for calm thoughts, soft reflections, and a quieter heart in a noisy world. Thank you for listening, and I hope this moment brought a little more peace to your day.